Welcome back, folks. Cumberland Outdoorsman with you today. This is a cold December 15th here in Tennessee, and what I've got for you today is I'm going to feature a rifle and a cartridge, both developed by Remington. What I've got firsthand is this Remington model 788. This one chambered in 222 Remington. So what I'll be doing is featuring the Remington 788 and the 222 Remington cartridge. The Remington 788 first came out in 1967, and it was produced until 1983, and there were about 565,000 rifles built in that time span. This one here happens to be a first year production. This one was built in June of 1967, and it came out with a American black walnut stock. The earlier models all came out with American black walnut stocks, and later were produced with birch or maple stocks, and they were stained to look like walnut. But anyway, when I first got this rifle, it was in bad shape. You couldn't even see the wood, so I stripped it down, and I was very pleased to see that it had a walnut stock. This one here is topped with a 3x9 Redfield partner scope, and it's held on by Burris mounts. These are vintage mounts and rings, and I like the older style because they're more streamlined. The Remington 788 had kind of an unusual bolt action design. Here you can see it has rear locking lugs. There are 3 rows of locking lugs that engage the receiver in the rear, instead of 2 locking lugs as is traditional on Mauser style actions that actually lock up in the front right behind the chamber. That's a feature that's also incorporated in the model 700 Remington, all the 700 series, the 722, the 721, and also in Winchester model 70s, the Savage 110, all have the front 2 opposing locking lugs, just like the original Mauser 98 action did. It's a very strong system, but this is also a very strong and rigid system. The Remington 788 was available in several different calibers. This one here being 222. The next one up would be the 223, the 22-250, the 243 Winchester, the 6mm Remington, the 7mm 08 Remington, and then we step up to the 30 caliber in 308 and 30-30, and also they were available in the 44 Magnum caliber. And this one here is the longer barrel version. There was also a shorter carbine version that came out in 1980 that had an 18.5-inch barrel. Okay, and those are real handy for carrying around in woods, especially in thick timber. I would recommend a cartridge like the 30-30 or the 44 Magnum with a shorter barrel. Very handy little rifle to carry around in the woods. These were not intended to be expensive rifles, folks. These were an economy type rifle, but by today's standards, they're pretty well built. This one also, I should mention, has a detachable box magazine, steel box magazine that holds 3 rounds. It's a single column. In other words, all the rounds stack on top of each other. It positively locks into the action, but they are very easy to lose. So if you have a Remington 788, make sure you keep up with the magazine, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get 1 or 2 extras if you can find them. The woods are full of these little box magazines where people have lost them through the years. So try to keep up with that. Another feature of the 788 is a very nice crisp trigger. The safety is right here on the side. Extremely fast lock time. probably the fastest lock time of any production rifle made, and that in itself makes it easier to shoot it very accurately, because there's not much time between the trigger pull and the time the round leaves the barrel. But anyway, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to shoot at 100 yards. I'm going to try some different loads, and I'm going to shoot 5 shots apiece and see what kind of grouping I can get at 100 yards. It's a little bit breezy, so you know the grouping might suffer just a little bit. But anyway, please pardon the noise in the background. That's someone cutting firewood, and understandably so with the cold weather. But when you live out in rural communities like I do, you know, you hear a lot of other noises like chainsaws and gunshots, things like that. But anyway, like I said, we're going to test that, and then also I'm going to do a ballistics test using 2 gallon-sized water jugs filled with water at 100 yards and see what kind of terminal performance the 222 Remington can actually accomplish at that distance. 100 yards is not that far, but it'll give you a rough estimate as to the potential power of the 222. Some additional information I'd like to add about this little 222 Remington is that it was developed by a designer for Remington, the famous Mike Walker, in 1950. That was when it was actually developed. And here I've got an older reloading manual, a Hornady reloading manual, that lists loadings for the 222 Remington. Starting out here with a 45 grain bullet, 50 grain, 53, 55, and also 60 grain bullets. And here it shows loadings for the 60 grain bullets exceeding 3,100 feet per second. And of course the most famous powder for this load is the 4198, and it's listed in all of the loadings. The other one I've noticed is the BLC2, loaded to 23.9 grains. You get 3,100 feet per second out of a 60 grain bullet from this diminutive little cartridge. And with 45 grain bullets, you can reach 3,400 feet per second. So it's quite respectable. I mean, you can get out there 200 to 250 yards rather easily. And if you know you got some of these newer loadings, like the ones made by Hornady, which are Superformance, they actually match the 223 and supersede it to some degree, and you can get 300 to 350 yard shots if you're a good marksman. But they really did a lot of research and stretched the capability of the 222 Remington, which it well deserves. You might want to give those a try if you own one of these rifles. So anyway, the famous Mike Walker from Remington, who recently passed away in 2013, was the inventor of the 222 Remington. Former designer for Remington, and he came up with the rear locking system that's also incorporated in the Rimfire 580 series rifles, which I'll be featuring in another video. The model 580, the 581, and the model 582. And it was also incorporated in the 540X series rifles, such as the 541S, which is a Supreme Sporter rifle. The man that was actually responsible for designing these actions was Wayne Leake, and he worked in conjunction with the famous Mike Walker, who came up with the Model 700 Remington, and who also, incidentally, developed the 222 Remington cartridge, was the father cartridge to the 223 and the 222 Remington Magnum, and now the 204 Ruger, because they all use the same head diameter that was developed by Mike Walker. It's a unprecedented round. The only other smaller 22 centerfire was the 22 Hornet at the time. Some of the more serious cartridges were the 220 Swift, which was a supreme high velocity 22 centerfire for extra long distance varmint shooting. That actually preceded the 222 Remington. So people wanted something a little bit more mild-mannered, and Mike Walker developed a real winner when he came up with the 222 Remington. For a long time, it was the world record most accurate cartridge ever developed. So anyway, let me get down here and shoot at 100 yards and see what kind of groups we can come up with. Well, here are the two groups that I shot at 100 yards, and what I was using was a reload that I developed myself using a 50 grain Sierra Blitz King, which is a varmint bullet, 18.5 grains of H4198, CCI primers, and Remington brass. Okay. Let's see, let me turn this around. This was the first group I shot. And that first shot right there at the top was from a clean barrel. All other subsequent shots fell right in there around the bullseye. And as you can see, they're pretty much dime-sized groups. You can cover it with a dime there, excepting, of course, the first shot. And then the second group here, this shot here that was on the side was actually my fault. That wasn't the rifle's fault. When I squeezed off that shot, I did not have the crosshair centered with the bullseye. But all the other shots, well, probably even that one included, can pretty much be covered by a dime. So dime-sized groups at 100 yards are pretty much a common thing for that rifle. I'm sure that if weather conditions were a little bit better and I were a better shot, I mean, I'm a pretty good shot, but I'm no bench rest expert by any means. That rifle could probably shoot them all into one ragged hole at 100 yards, you know. The accuracy potential of the 222 is truly superb. I mean, it'll outshoot any other centerfire 22. And that's why it was so well liked in its day. In comparison, here I have a 222 round that I loaded with 55 grain Sierra Game Kings. This is a 270 round. Okay, you can see just how small this cartridge is compared to a bigger high-powered rifle load like the 270. That's in 30-06 length cartridges. So it's a short action cartridge, and it could probably well be defined as a good medium range varmint rifle or varmint round. You definitely want to shoot it in a rifle, although there are a few pistols out there that will shoot the 222. The 222 has an average muzzle velocity of around 31 to 3,200 feet per second. You can go up or down. I tailored this load to go down a little bit because I want to extend the barrel life of that rifle. It's shooting right around 3,000 feet per second with a 50 grain bullet. I can go up a few grains and get 3,200 feet per second, pretty easily. Some of the cartridges that are currently being produced are made by Remington, and here's some that I bought from Federal, and all these in 222 Remington. Both of these have 50 grain soft points, and those are loaded pretty much almost to maximum. And I've got another group that I shot when I first got the gun, just to see the accuracy potential, and that's at 100 yards. Now this is using the Sierra Match Kings, 52 grain Match Kings with 19.2 grains of powder of 4198. And you can see here that's easily covered by a dime. That's 5 shots. About maybe a 1/4 of an inch group or so. Here are a couple of powders that I've got. This is the ideal powder for the 222 Remington. This is actually a classic powder. This is made by Hodgdon, H4198. And right here at the top you can see a listing for the 222. And it lists a 50 grain Hornady spire point at 3,160 feet per second. Okay. Here's also another powder. This is H322. And the second listing shows it for the 222 Remington as well. This one's a little bit slower, around 3,079 feet per second, but very good powder and potentially very accurate. Here's an old magazine that I've bought back in 1980. Okay, this is the complete 22. And on the front cover you see here, this is the Remington 541S and other classic firearms such as the Smith & Wesson Model 41 and the Colt Diamondback there. Very desirable guns to have. And there are a few articles in here that I've gone over and actually gotten some good information on powder loads and bullet weights to use, and the combinations of those powders and bullets. Here we talk about the 222 Remington. The pages are kind of yellowed because the magazine is old, but it's still in good shape. And right there on the same page is featured the Remington Model 788. And in this particular article, the author covers all the centerfire 22 cartridges available at the time, 22 centerfires. Okay. And it also gives you a listing of all of the rifles that were currently available chambered in 222, 22 Hornet, 22 Remington Magnum, the 22 250, which is still wildly popular, all the way up to the 220 Swift, which he talks about it being a honest-to-goodness 400-yard cartridge, and it's unmatched by any other 22 centerfire as far as the flatness of trajectory out to 400 yards. But for around here, the 222 will work just fine. Last summer, I had a woodchuck, more commonly known as a groundhog, here below the Mason-Dixon line, and he was tunneling under one of my outbuildings. And one day my wife spotted him and she pointed it out to me, and I went out here with the 222, and it was only a 60-yard shot, but I didn't want the groundhog to crawl away crippled, which could have happened if I'd have shot him with a 22. But I mean, what I mean by that is a 22 rimfire. But I wanted to see, that animal die right away so that I could eliminate that problem. And when I touched off the trigger, I mean, it was lights out instantly. He never knew what hit him. and shot that groundhog with a 50 grain Blitz King. The bullet never exited. All I saw was an entry wound, but the tissue destruction was quite dramatic because that bullet completely fragmented. So anyway, let's go ahead and do the ballistic test at 100 yards. I've got 2 water jugs set up down here, and we'll see what kind of performance we get out of that 50 grain Blitz King in the 222. So here we go. Let's give it a try. Okay, that was a shot with my 222 Remington at 100 yards. This is the first jug filled with water. It completely demolished it. Hit exactly where I aimed. And then the bullet went through and hit this jug. It's pretty much got fragments of bullet in the bottom. Let's see what's left over here. All the lead's gone. There's what's left of the jacket. So it completely disintegrated. That's the kind of performance you want when you're going to hunt varmints. Whether you're shooting woodchucks or coyotes or crows or anything else at a good distance, you want that kind of terminal performance. There's another piece of lead left over. But by the time the bullet made it into this jug, it completely fragmented. And that's using the 50 grain Sierra Blitz King. Loaded to about 2,990 feet per second. I can go up from that, but there's not really much need. As you can see, the destruction is more than ample. Well, here's the Remington 788 on my bench rest, and what I've got here is some vintage 222 centerfire ammunition. This is some Super X that I've collected. This is Remington's high-speed 50 grain soft point. This is all vintage ammo, no longer available, and you can tell by the price tag there that that's been some time ago. Cartridges are still intact. And here's some Norma 222 Norma ammunition. This is also vintage. Vintage ammo. And there's some Peters, which is pretty much the same company as that made ammunition for Remington. And some of the newer offerings are by Cellier and Bellot. This is 222 Remington. This one came with 52 grain bullet, hollow point bow tail. And this is something else here that I've run across. This is PPU ammunition, and here it says it's made in Serbia. And I got to tell you, you know, for the price, it's not bad. Around $10 a box. Pretty good ammunition, and has really good brass too. But anyway, that's featuring my 22 centerfire that I would like to try for coyotes this winter after deer season. I've seen a few coyotes over where I deer hunt, and I would like to give that a try using the Model 788. Well folks, as you can probably tell by now, the 222 Remington is one of my favorite cartridges. It's very mild-mannered, it's easy to shoot, you can even let youngsters shoot it. There's no real noticeable recoil, very little. It's not very loud. It's supremely accurate. It has a long case life and also long barrel life. You can shoot a lot of rounds through the same barrel and never really have to worry about barrel erosion, as would be the case with higher intensity cartridges like the 22-250, even though the 22-250 is also a fine round. The 222 Remington was once available in a variety of different rifles, like this model 788. But I've got a list here of all the rifles that it was available for, or available and produced in. And that was in the Remington 700 series, such as the 721, 722, and the model 700. Also, some other manufacturers were Ruger, Savage, CZ, Tikka, Howa, and Cooper. Now, Cooper rifles you have to order, and there's about a 6-month waiting period to get those rifles. And those are supreme rifles, let me tell you. Those are very well built. Also, in the past, the Winchester Model 70 was chambered in 222 Remington, and the Seiko Vixen was a very popular rifle and extremely accurate right out of the box with that 222 loading. Another fine rifle made in Austria is the Steyr, and it came in their Steyr Mannlicher models, the Klein-Gunther and the Kriko. Okay, all these rifles were chambered in 222 at one time or another. There are still some rifles currently built chambered for the 222, and those include the CZ and the Howa and the Tikka, and I'm sure you probably find some others out there. It seems to me that the 222 has gained some resurgence in popularity here in America. It's never really lost its popularity in European countries, where it's regularly used on smaller big game like the roe deer. The roebucks, an adult roebuck can usually get up to 60 or 70 pounds sometimes, but that's rather small, diminutive deer compared to, you know, our whitetails or mule deer or anything like that. But it's a cartridge ideally suited for that particular animal, and they're regularly used there. So can you use the 222 centerfire on whitetails, on deer? If you're disciplined enough to know when you have an ethical shot, and if you have the right constructed bullet and loading, and if you keep your shots at 100 yards or less with good broadside shots, you should be able to cleanly take deer-sized game like a whitetail, you know, with good precise shots and good marksmanship. Would I recommend the 222 for deer hunting? Probably not, especially not for the average shooter. But I once read an article about a lady who used a 222 Remington exclusively to harvest deer and antelope. And she cleanly harvested well over a dozen head of big whitetails with one shot on each animal. She was a cool marksman. She knew when to take the shot and exactly where to place it. She never had a problem. If you can get through that rib cage and get into that lung tissue just like you're supposed to, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to cleanly harvest a whitetail. Have I tried it? No, I have not. But I may give it a try in the future. But do I deer hunt with the 222? There's really no reason to when you have other cartridges available. I mean, I've got a 243, 308, 270, which is a perfect deer cartridge, especially out at extended ranges, and of course I've got the 30-06. But any of those cartridges fit the bill really well for deer hunting. So by using a 222, you're really hindering yourself in harvesting game, even though, you know, if you do have perfect broadside shots, you can cleanly harvest game with it. I once read an article somewhere It may have been in a discussion forum online where someone said that the 222 is obsolete and it won't be around anymore a year from now. Well, that was several years ago. The 222 is not really obsolete. It was just overshadowed by the 223 round because it's so widely available in rifles such as the AR-15, which is America's most popular rifle. And sadly to say, it's also the one rifle that's featured in these mass shootings that tragically take place from time to time. I really wish that wouldn't happen, but we don't live in a perfect world. So anyway, the 223 was actually developed from the 222, and it was used in the Vietnam War back in the late 60s and early 70s. And it's still a popular round. And because it was available as a military cartridge, a military loading, it became popular just about everywhere worldwide. So it kind of overshadowed the 222, even though the 222, in my opinion, is a superior cartridge in regards to shootability, barrel life, accuracy, and also just in the pleasantness of the cartridge itself. It's easy to reload. It has a nice long neck on the cartridge, so you know it holds on to the bullet really well. The brass is still available, and loadings are still available. Like I say, that Remington still makes them, Federal still makes them, Winchester still makes them, all your major manufacturers. And you've got also major manufacturers that produce reloading components like Hodgdon and others. Another good powder to try would be the BLC2, and I would say there's multiple loadings. I mean, Varget is another good powder that you might want to try if you decide to reload for the 222. I believe, like I say, it's making a comeback because things are still available for it. A few additional ammunition manufacturers that still produce 222 ammunition are Hornady, Cellier and Bellot, Fiocchi, Norma, and PPU. And you can find a lot of these available online. So anyway, let me close out by saying the Remington 788 is the one rifle that I've always wanted, and I've always wanted one in a 222 Remington. I would like to have one in 7mm 08 for deer hunting, simply because I enjoy a shorter action, quick handling rifle, especially in the deer woods. And I think the 7mm 08 with its superior ballistics is a beautiful round, just a fine round for deer hunting, for medium-sized game. Hopefully I can find one of those, and if I do, I'll feature it on an upcoming video. But also, let me say, I appreciate your patience and staying with me. I hope I filled the content of this video with some useful information that you can use, and maybe you already know a lot of this. And if you're a Remington 788 owner, no matter what caliber you have, I think you'll agree with me that they're supremely accurate rifles, and for a long time they were underrated and kind of left in the back room in the shadows of the Model 700 Remington and other fine bolt action rifles. But they're becoming more and more popular because people are discovering that the 788 action is quite dependable and rigid, and the trade-in value on these older guns is actually going up as time goes by. So anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for this video today, and let me just say I appreciate you watching the video, and remember, if you can get outdoors, hunting, fishing, shooting, hiking, backpacking, camping, whatever, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And until next time, this is a Cumberland Outdoorsman. Remember, hit the like button, hit the bell icon, and subscribe. That way you'll know when more videos will be coming your way. So until next time, my friends, y'all take care and have a great day.